we're responding to those comments. Okay, so make sure you put your comments in both places. And just to let you know again, because I don't know how much you heard, I am the host of the show. Grateful to be here this Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Time here. So grab a cup of coffee, grab some tea, get you some cookies. You're in for a special treat this evening. I can promise you and I can assure you that we're having a celebration again this evening. So at this time, we're going to have Janis, the phenomenal Janis F. Kearney, to introduce herself to our audience.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Teresa, for that very warm words. Thank you for having me on tonight. Thank you for, allowing me to write for Triumphant Magazine. It's a joy and an honor. And I'm honored to be here tonight. I am in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm a writer, and I have done a number of things, but writing has always been my passion. I was writer for the state of Arkansas for several years. And then I took over the Arkansas State Press, which was founded and owned by Daisy and L.C. Bates, who
Okay.
were our civil rights leaders here in Arkansas. Daisy Bates was one of the first female NAACP leaders,
Okay.
and she was the leader of the Little Rock Nine 1957 Central High crisis. And most people know about that, but a lot of people don't know that Daisy Bates was the face and the name
Oh, wow.
that kind of led that whole crisis. And so I met her when I was 16 years old, and
Oh,
then met her
16.
again later on and became editor and then publisher of her newspaper.
Oh, that's
I
outstanding.
also served as personal diarist to President Bill Clinton for 5 years during his years as president. And that was an extraordinary opportunity for someone like me who grew
Yes.
up on a sharecropper's farm in a small town in Arkansas. It's much smaller than Little Rock. So
Okay.
I've been blessed. I've been blessed all my life. My parents were the first blessing because they were able to raise 19 children
Oh, wow.
and make sure that they instilled in us all the right things that allowed for 18 of 19 children to go to school. And most of us go to graduate school and do the things that we felt like we're supposed to be doing in this world. And so I have to wake up grateful every day of my life.
Absolutely.
And God put it on me to be a writer. And I think that's because my father was such a wonderful storyteller and I loved listening to his stories. So I always wanted to one day be a storyteller. So
Okay.
my storytelling is on paper, his was oral.
Yes.
But that's what I'm doing. And I believe that's what God put me on this earth to do. So thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
And thank you as well. And you said your dad was a storyteller. He
Hmm.
told you a lot of different stories.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely. He
That's
lived a very interesting life. I wrote a book about my dad. He was a traveler and you could say a vagabond. He left home very early at 11 years old
oh,
and
wow.
traveled all over the country and even caught um, a ship that was going to Cuba and he
Hmm.
worked on the ship. So he was a person who loved life and
Wow.
exploring life. And God blessed him as well. He lived to be 107 years old and
107?
enjoyed every day of his life. Yes.
Wow.
So he
That's
had a lot of stories to share.
wow. And you said what was the name of the book that you wrote about your dad?
Sundays with TJ.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Mhm.
And did I hear you right? What you said the siblings you had? How many siblings?
19 siblings.
I thought I heard you right. I was
Yes.
like, okay, let me double check.
You heard me
Oh,
right. There were 19 children. My
yeah.
mom and my dad came to their marriage with one child
Okay.
each, but they had 17 children together.
Wow. No,
Mhm.
no downtime, I take
No
it.
downtown.
Okay, so I do want to say congratulations to you on your new release book that you put out there only on Sundays, Mahalia Jackson's Long Journey. So I want to say congratulations to you. What a
Thank
great
you.
masterpiece that you have out there, and we definitely want to. We have some questions for you. So our first question for you is share with the audience about Mahalia Jackson's roots, and then what were her parents and where were her parents and grandparents born?
Um, Mahalia grew up in New Orleans. That's where she was born. Her mother, of course, was from further south, Louisiana, in a place called Legionnaires, um, Louisiana, in Pointe Coupe Parish in Louisiana. That's where her grandparents, her maternal grandparents, and her mother was born. Her mother left there when she was, I think she was about 20 years old, maybe 22 years old. She left there and moved to New Orleans. She came from a pretty large family too. There was actually 12 of the of her family members, and they all except one left. Their mother died, and they kind of immediately left and moved from what actually was a plantation. They worked and lived on a plantation in Ligoniers, and they all moved to New Orleans. So that's where Mahalia was born in 1911, and that's where she lived for the 16 years that she was there in Louisiana. Her paternal her father was lived there in New Orleans, but her paternal grandparents were also they were on a plantation in South Louisiana.
Oh wow, that's awesome. That they're from New Orleans because it's amazing. I just got back there with a friend of mine from New Orleans. Her daughter actually got married, and I had never been there, so it's such a great place. A lot of history there.
Yes,
History
it
there.
is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question that we have for you is her early childhood was in New Orleans. Share with us some of her childhood, how it was for her growing up as a child there in New Orleans.
It was it was a combination of good and bad. She loved New Orleans. She loved the fact that there was music everywhere.
Okay.
Even when she was really, really young, she loved music. And so, of course, New Orleans, there was music everywhere. There was music coming, from the juke joints. There was music from the churches. There was music on the streets. There was music in Congo Park. There was music everywhere. And that was part of who she was. It helped define who she was. She loved baseball. She was very good at baseball playing. And
Wow.
she was a tomboy. A lot of people didn't
Okay.
know that. But she grew up playing with boys a lot and playing sports with them. And she was very good in school. She was good in school, but unfortunately, she wasn't able to stay in school. Her
Okay.
mother died very young. When she was very young, she was 6 years old, I think, when her mother died.
Well, that's
So,
young.
yeah, she was raised by her Aunt Duke. And Aunt Duke was very strict and very structured. So all of the things that Mahalia grew up wanting to do, she really wasn't able to do, and she also had to stop school very early in like the
Wow.
fourth grade, and she became a washerwoman, a laundress, a babysitter. So she ended up working very very early to
Wow.
help the household.
Wow. That's something else, like you
Yes,
said. And then to lose your mom at such a young age.
at a very early age, and as I learned more about her and read about her and researched her, I think that impacted a lot of who she became and the person she became was that loss of her mother very early. um, the other thing about her childhood that I didn't mention is the fact that not only was music everywhere around New Orleans, but
Yes.
she started singing when she was 4 years old.
4
and
years old?
4 years
Wow.
old. And she became almost an immediate star in the church. She started singing at her father's um, parents' church. And then her aunt and her mother brought her to Mount Moriah Church,
Okay.
where she grew up. And that's where she sang until she left there in 1927. And she was absolutely a star at the church.
Wow. That's an early age, like you said, 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a blessing. What a blessing.
Yes.
Now the next question that we have for you is where when did well you said already gave it to us. You told us that she started singing at an early age. Now was there anybody else in her family that sang as well? Was she
She was the only person in her immediate family that sang. Her father, who she didn't really live with, her father's family, some siblings he had, they were part of musical groups,
okay?
but she wasn't. And they didn't sing, they weren't the gospel singing group. They sang more on the blues side. And she was kind of drawn to that as well. But,
Right.
you know, thanks to Aunt Duke and thanks to God,
That's
she
it.
left that alone and she went with gospel and stayed with gospel.
Yeah, that's a blessing. All of us need an Aunt Duke in our life.
Yes, yes,
Okay, now the next question that we have is who was young Haley's mentors?
that's a good question. And she had, mentors, but they were immediate family mostly.
Okay.
She didn't know a lot of people, I don't think, outside her family. It was either people at church or her family. Her Aunt Hannah, she was very close to her, and her Aunt Bale. She grew up in a family of women. I mean, women
Okay.
kind of were all around her. So the people that she listened to and she learned from were the women in her household mostly. And the other person is her uncle Porter, who actually was the person who brought all those siblings to New Orleans. He was the first person to
Okay.
leave Legionnaires and move to New Orleans.
Oh,
And he
wow.
went back and he brought all of his family there because he believed that his mother, who had passed, would have wanted them to leave that plantation and
Yes.
move to New Orleans for a better life. So her Uncle Porter was very special to her.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And like you said, he didn't just go there and forget about the rest of the family. He brought the family
No,
there with him.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very awesome. And thank you for sharing that with us. Now, the next question that we have is whose music did she pattern her own singing after?
And this has been discussed a lot, but growing up, she loved Bessie Smith. She loved her,
Okay.
and when she was younger, for sure, that's who she would pattern her singing after. As she got older, she kind of created her own song sound and her own singing style. But when she was younger, Bessie Smith was one of the people that she just really loved. She was kind of obsessed with her.
Okay.
And Aunt Duke knew it, and she kind of tried to steer her away from that.
Oh, she did.
Yes, she tried really hard to steer away.
That's
And I talk about in the book how when Mahalia got ready to leave, that was one of the fears that Aunt Duke had, that she would go to Chicago and she would, be kind of drawn to the other side, to the music of the Bessie Smiths and Moms Mabley and people like that.
yes. Well, evidently she did an excellent job.
Hmm. Hmm.
She
Yes.
did an excellent job. Now, share about Mahalia's mother and father.
Yes, Mahalia's mother was an attractive young woman, and she had a son when she moved to New Orleans. She had a son, I think, when she was 18 years old, and she moved to New Orleans. And shortly after she moved there, she met Johnny Jackson,
Okay.
who was a very nice looking young man. He was a barber. He was a part-time preacher at his parents' church, and he also was a stevedore on the wharf on the docks. He followed his father there to work on the docks. So somehow, I'm not sure how Charity, that's her mother's name, Charity, how
Okay.
Charity met him, but they met and fell in love, and she ended up pregnant uh, with Mahalia, and without her knowledge that Janis Jackson had a family already. Um,
Okay.
and he lived very close. They didn't live far apart, just
Oh, they
blocks away
didn't?
from each other. No,
Wow.
no. So Mahalia didn't grow up in that family, but she got to know the family after she was old enough to realize that her father lived not very far from her. And I think she created her own relationship with him.
Okay. Yeah, you don't keep that much away when you're that close, like you
That's
said.
right. That's right.
Okay, thank you. Now,
Mhm.
when did she leave New Orleans and where did she go?
She left in 1927. She was 16 years old, and she left with her Aunt Hannah, and they went to Chicago. They were part of that great migration. There were so many Blacks from all over the South
Wow.
leaving and going to Chicago. I mean, they went other places as well, but most people went to Chicago because
Okay.
there were lots of things to do there, lots of work for Blacks. A lot of people went to Detroit and places like that as well. But yeah, she went with her Aunt Hannah, and she lived with her Aunt Hannah and Aunt Alice there in Chicago.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's
Hmm.
pretty good. Chicago. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, share about Mahalia's mother. Well, you already told me about her mother and father, but if you could tell me when did well, you already told me that as well. So you're on ball. So thank you so much for everything you have answered so far. Well, the next question that we have is how did she live in Chicago? How did she live?
She lived with her aunts, and she lived with them until I guess it was about 1937 or 38.
Okay.
In 1936, she was married. She got married to a
Okay.
man by the name of Ike Hockenhull, and they were married for maybe 5 years,
Okay.
something like
5 years.
that. Um, she fell in love with him and married him, and somehow found out that he liked to gamble. You know, he loved the horses.
Oh
And
wow.
her being a very religious person,
Yes.
that was completely against, all of her philosophy about spirituality. And
Yes.
she tried very hard to help him stop gambling, but she wasn't able to do it. And they decided that, they would go their separate ways, but they never lost their friendship. They stayed friends forever.
That's pretty good. Like you said,
Hmm.
they stayed friends.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you said that she didn't compromise.
Right,
She didn't
right.
she didn't compromise on her beliefs.
No, she didn't. No, she didn't.
Okay, awesome. Now the next question that we have is did she begin singing in Chicago when she arrived?
She did begin singing in the church that her aunts belonged to. When
Okay.
she got there, she wasn't sure what kind of church she wanted to go to. She knew she wanted to sing. Her aunts kind of pushed her to join their church, which is I think it's called the Greater um, S- Salem Baptist Church.
Okay.
Hmm. Um, so she kind of looked around at different churches, and then in the end, she did choose to join that church. And she also joined this group. It was a quartet before she joined, but once she joined, it became a quintet. And she and another girl was part of it. And then the sons of the pastor were they made up that group. And they
Okay.
got so good. They were so good that they ended up traveling to other parts of Chicago and even outside Chicago
Oh, that's pretty
sometimes.
good.
Because I mean, together they were really great, but she was the star of that group as well.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
That's
So yeah, she did start singing. It was smaller, but she started singing pretty early once she got there.
okay. That's awesome. Awesome. Now, the next question that we have is when did she make it as a recognized singer?
I think it was around 1934 that she made her first record that really went off the charts, and that was Moving On Up, I think it was. Um, and everybody bought that song. And after that, she just everybody kind of started finding out who she was. And
Yeah.
people that hadn't really recognized her before or didn't really want to have her singing in their churches, they started recognizing her
Wow.
because they realized that she had a voice that people all over not only the country, but the world really
That's it.
recognized. So she would go back to some of the places that had said, well, this is not really the music that we're interested in. So then they would ask her, and she would go back and she would sing for them. But she became so large that until wasn't able actually to do a lot of the churches that wanted her because she was into Hollywood. She was doing all outside the country, all
Wow.
over the country.
Most
Carnegie
definitely.
Hall. She was invited some of everywhere. Once she got on her feet and started singing, she became big pretty fast.
Yeah, that's awesome. It reminds me of where the Bible say, your gifts will make room for you. And
Yes,
God made it worldwide for her.
absolutely. I always go back to that dream that her aunt had, who's she told her when she was little. One thing I didn't say was when Haley was little, and Haley is what they called her. It's a little girl. When
Okay.
Haley was little, she was crippled. She was not actually crippled, but her legs were crippled, and she walked really kind of scissor. Her legs would go across like that,
Oh,
and
wow.
people would make fun of her and all of that. But her aunt told her, "Don't you worry about that. One of
Mm,
these days, you are going to walk with kings and queens, and
wow.
they will love your voice so much you won't even remember what these people are saying about you." And she kept that dream. She held on to that dream for years and years. So when her Aunt Hannah came back and asked her if she wanted to come to Chicago, in
Yes.
her mind, she was remembering that dream, even though she said that she wanted to go because she wanted to take nursing classes because there was a nurse's training going on. And she said that's what she wanted to do, and she may have, but in the bottom of her heart was that dream that Hannah had put in her.
Isn't that something? The spoken words, power
Yes,
of words,
yes.
powerful words. Like you said, her aunt had spoke it over her,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and she took it to heart, like you said.
Absolutely.
What a blessing. What a blessing. That's a blessing in itself.
Yes.
Now, the next question that we have is who were some of the performers that she considered as friends?
Oh, goodness. Count Basie, Duke Ellington, um, uh, Louis Armstrong, um, Aretha Franklin. Even though she was young, she kind of trained Aretha Franklin. Um, oh, it was so many. It was so many. She knew so many people. Dinah Shore was a very good friend of hers. Um, so it was a lot of them. She got to know just about everybody. Sidney Poitier, Sammy Davis, um, Ella Fitzgerald, all of them, because those are the kind of people that she would connect to when they would invite her to Hollywood to sing or to New York to sing. Those are
Yes.
the kinds of people that she ended up rubbing shoulders with.
Wow. And it's amazing those names you mentioned because all of them are heavy hitters and
Yes,
she was a
she
heavy
was one
hitter
of
as
them.
well.
She was one of them.
Yeah, she was a
Absolutely.
heavy hitter as well.
Yes.
And like as we know her, like you said, the queen of gospel.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a
Absolutely.
what a blessing. Now, who were the most important people in her life?
Um, in her adult life, I would say she loved her church. She loved her church. She loved her pastor was Pastor Jenkins, and she cared a lot about him. Um, some of the people that were in her orbit were like Mayor Daley, who
Okay.
was the mayor of Chicago for many years. John H. Johnson, who was founder of Ebony Jet magazine.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yes, several of the lawyers during that time. But I will tell you that probably the closest person to her during that time for several years was Dr. Martin Luther King,
Okay.
and they were extremely close. She was not what they would you would call a rabble rouser. She didn't march. She didn't do a lot of things that other people did. But when she met Martin Luther King, and he told her she had a responsibility because she had so much power and
Yes.
she had her voice, and people listened to her.
They
And if she
certainly
said
did.
something, people believed it. So her responsibility was to help, make the world better.
Yes.
I don't think anyone had ever told her that before.
Wow.
And she took it to heart. And she and Martin grew so close, and she helped so many ways in
Wow.
helping him with the civil rights struggle. She brought him to Chicago. She introduced him to everybody who was anybody in Chicago. She helped him raise money. She raised lots of money for him.
Wow.
She was very close to Coretta, his wife, Coretta. So they had a very, very, very close relationship.
Wow. Her and Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yes,
Wow.
yes,
That's and like you said, for him to say that to her, he saw a lot in her as well.
absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so the next question that we have, and then we're going to take a small little break. What about her personal life, marriage, and children?
And if there's something sad about her life, that is it. It seems like that marriage just wasn't going to work for her. Um, I think she was married to her career, for one thing. I think God had put her singing first in her life.
That's it.
But she also wanted a family. She wanted a husband. She
Yeah.
wanted children. She couldn't have children.
Okay.
Um, and she had two husbands, and neither one of those worked out. She seemed to have chosen men that were not right for her. It didn't work. It's like
Wow.
they were on different paths.
That's it.
And she wanted it so bad to work, and it just didn't work. So she didn't have a happy personal life when it came to relationships with men, uh, or the fact that she couldn't have children because she loved children, and she couldn't have them.
Wow. That's amazing, like you said. It's wonderful to know that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Wow. So we're gonna take a short little break for a moment. Remember, if you have questions, please make sure you put your questions in the comment section. We will be watching out for those comments in YouTube as well as Facebook. And right now, we're gonna just take a brief little break, not too long, so please don't go anywhere. And then we're gonna come right back in just a moment. Okay, so give us just a moment. Hope that you're enjoying this and you're being enlightened as much as I am. I'm learning so much this evening. And we're just so grateful, like I said, to be able to have the phenomenal Janis F. Kearney in front of us. So hold on for just a moment and we're going to play a commercial real quick. Thank you. So we want to just say thank you once again for tuning in with us. We are having such a marvelous time learning about the Queen of Gospel, Mahalia Jackson, and the wonderful, phenomenal Janis F. Kearney bringing everything to life before us today. And we're just so grateful and honored to have her in our presence this evening. So we have several more questions. And once again, if you have any questions or comments, please put it either in YouTube or Facebook. That way we can go ahead and respond to it at this time. So we're going to go back to our show and everything. And the next question that I have is what were some of the most pivotal moments in her life and career?
Um, Good questions. I think her first marriage was probably one of the first pivotal times in her career because she found out that this is really what she wanted to do. Her first husband tried very hard to get her to become a more cultured singer. Um, he tried to get her to sing in a traveling show, and she was going to do it until the last minute. She decided not to, and I think that was God telling her that this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing, what you're doing. So I think that helped kind of cement her understanding of what God wanted her to do. Um, I think the next thing, and I mentioned it, was the Martin Luther King Jr. meeting him. I think
Yes,
that changed her life in a lot of ways. It made her understand that there was a bigger, even bigger purpose for her
that's it.
living and her life. And what could be better than the civil rights struggle, the civil rights fight that he fought so hard? And she kind of gave over to it and said, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to help this
Absolutely.
cause. So that kind of changed her life and made her even bigger. And
Yes.
then it was the fact that so many people from all over the world just fell in love with her music and fell in love with her. And she started moving just up, up, up. I mean, everybody wanted her. Everybody wanted her to come and sing before the kings and queens, as
Wow.
her aunt had said. She ended up singing before kings and queens. She was invited to sing for presidents at
Wow.
least 3 or 4 times to the White House.
Oh, three
Um,
or four times. That's quite a
yes,
bit.
yes. All of the biggest places, Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, all of those places, she was invited to sing. So I think all of those were pivotal in her life. Her second marriage, again, was also pivotal because it was a late marriage. It was
Yes.
her, before she just decided, I think I want to do this. She kind of wrestled with that, but she was in love with this man, and she went ahead and married. And I think that marriage was it harmed her more than she probably would say because
Wow.
you could sense that her health started going down
Oh,
just shortly after that. And it was, I'm sure, it's more mental and, you know,
absolutely.
spiritual than anything. Um,
Absolutely.
so that changed something. That changed something in her life. So she had some ups and downs. She had a lot of ups and downs in her life, but she never changed. She never wavered from her goal to sing God's word and to not dabble, not dabble in other music. She kind of stuck to what she was supposed to be doing.
Wow. Why do you think she had that sincere or that great commitment towards gospel music?
Well, I think because one of the things, she was so drawn to the other music when she was young. She really
Yes.
was. And she had promised God, she had promised Aunt Duke.
Okay.
And then at one point, her grandfather came to Chicago to visit her. And her grandfather adored her. He really did. And Mahalia asked him to go and take a picture. Let's go take a family picture. And he didn't really want to, but he went because it was Mahalia asking. And he
Yes.
ended up having a stroke
Mm,
uh, at the photo studio. And Mahalia felt like it was her fault. So she prayed to God and she promised God if he would save her grandfather, that she
mm.
would never stray from gospel songs, songs that praised him. And, he did save him. Um, and Mahalia kept her promise.
Wow, that's awesome. That's powerful.
Yes, yes,
That's
it
really
is.
powerful. And God was
Mhm.
able to turn back time for her grandfather.
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely.
Amazing. That's a blessing.
Hmm.
Now, the next question that we have, was there a point when Mahalia Jackson knew that she had made it big? Was there ever a point?
That's a good question. Um, I think the fact that she sang before, one of the things that really touched her uh, is when she sang before the Prime Minister of India,
Okay.
Indira Gandhi. And this is a woman that they said never, ventured outside her palace, and never, she'd never gone and listened to a singer before that came from another country. And it was just phenomenal that she was really drawn to Mahalia Jackson. And Mahalia just couldn't believe that this prime minister was that drawn to her. And I
Wow.
think that at that point she realized how she impacted people, how her voice and her singing impacted other people. Um, so I think I got out of all the things that I read and learned was that was a kind of a pivotal point for her. And they became friends, not close friends, but they stayed in touch after that.
Okay.
And that said a lot. That said a
It
lot.
did.
Mm-hmm.
Speaks volumes in itself. Speaks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next question that we have are, what are her biggest hits? What are some of her biggest hits?
Oh goodness, she had so many. Um, and moving on up, of course, that was a huge one. Um, Troubles of the World is one. Um, I have a whole list of them, and I can't tell you all the names of them, but she had so many that people loved. And
Yeah.
I'll remember it when we leave here, but I
Well,
can't remember all the names.
I know some of them. My
Okay.
mom, she absolutely loved Precious Lord, Take
Oh
My
yeah.
Hand.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That was Martin Luther King Jr.'s favorite one from her.
one of his favorite ones.
Hmm.
And like you said, she has so many great ones. I think
People
she
like for
also,
her to sing the Lord's Prayer as
oh,
well.
The
Hmm.
Lord's Prayer.
Hmm.
Yeah, I tell you, I listen to some of her songs now, and just like how you said that she still has effect on you even right now. You can hear the
Hmm.
songs, and it's just something
She
about it.
put her everything into each song. Every song, she put everything into it.
She certainly did. Now, okay, so thank you for answering that question. If any of you listening to us right now have any favorite songs that you like, we would love for you to also put that in here as well. And then the next question that we have is, how did you have this vision with being able to write it, and how long did you carry it? And just tell us some things there if you don't mind, please.
Sure.
Yes.
I The vision did not come to me. It was brought to me.
Yes.
Um, I've lived in Chicago for 6 years, almost 7 years. And during my time in Chicago, my husband and I met um, Roland Barris and his wife, Berlene, and became friends with them. And they invited us to dinner at their home. And lo and behold, their home was Mahalia Jackson's home. And we had no idea when we went there. So when we got there and he started telling us about Mahalia. He knew her and about the home. And he also shared some documents with me that had been left at the home, and said, I would only give this to someone who I know is a writer and appreciates history. So, and I promised him that I would research and I would write about Mahalia Jackson. And that took a long time. It was 15 years before I actually sat down and started writing. And that was during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
And I actually sat down and started writing on the book in 2020. Even though I had done some traveling and I'd done some research, um,
Yes,
I hadn't actually sat down, and it doesn't happen until you sit down and start writing.
that's true.
You can have boxes and boxes of research, but it may not take you anywhere if you don't want to actually do the work. So that's when I started on it, and I promised myself that I was going to finish that book, and I did. I did in 20 early 2022.
Okay, that's outstanding. Now, when you went to that house, did you know it was her house or?
Absolutely not. No, no, we had no idea that that was her house. We were making comments about, oh, we like this house, and about different things about it, but we had no knowledge. And it was just so amazing when he told me that, because my memory of Mahalia Jackson was when she sang Troubles of the World
Yeah.
in imitation of life. That's the only memory really that I had of her. And when he started telling me that she had lived there, I'm remembering then, and
Yes.
he had all these other stories about her, how she'd moved into that house during the height of the, segregation, and she had to
Wow.
fight to get that house because it was a white neighborhood,
Yes.
basically a white neighborhood, and they wanted no black people
Mm,
in there. And how many times that people came by and shot in her house, and
my goodness.
threw things in her yard. So it was very hard for her, but she didn't give up. She stayed in the house.
Right. And what are some other things that people may not know about Mahalia Jackson? What are some things that she
Well, I
did that?
Yeah, I think the fact that she loved children so much, and she would always find a way to give to children. Uh,
Yes.
she had a foundation actually, and she gave scholarships to children who wanted to
Okay.
sing or wanted to do things. And she also, after she moved into the house, and I always found this interesting, when she moved into the house and after things finally calmed down after weeks and weeks of them, harassing her,
Wow.
after things finally calmed down, she had an ice cream party, and she invited all the little white children in the community
Okay.
to come to her ice cream party, which brought, of course, their parents brought them. So she found a way to kind of reconcile and let's get to know each other, and that helped. That did help some. So she was always trying to find a way to reconcile and to stop, negative feelings. Um, but that was one thing about her, and she liked shopping. She liked pretty things.
Yes.
She loved hats. She had a cousin who made hats, made beautiful hats. So most of the hats that you will see, if you look through Google or whatever, and you see all these hats that she wears, there's a cousin that actually made most of those hats for
Oh,
her.
that's pretty good.
Yeah, she absolutely loved hats. She loves holidays. When she had trees outside her house, and she would decorate all the trees in her yard, because when she
Wow.
grew up, they didn't have trees. They didn't have Christmas trees. And she always went, they had a Christmas tree at church. And she loved going to church on Christmas to see the Christmas tree. And she always wanted Christmas trees. So when she got her own house, she just made sure she had as many Christmas trees as she wanted to.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and she loved to cook. She was a very, very good cook because Duke taught her early on how to cook. So she knew how to cook really well. So Martin Luther King got to eat some really good Cajun New Orleans food when he came to visit her.
Wow, that's awesome. That's very, very awesome. Now the next question that we have is there's also like she was to me she was before her time.
Hmm.
And you could tell you can expound on it, but some of the things like business wise, tell us some
Hmm.
things that she did out there business wise that because I didn't even realize this
Hmm. She
until
was
you
a
revealed it.
very good businesswoman. And even when she was a child, she was good with money. She would save every little cent she could.
Wow.
For some reason, she had an intuitive knowledge that saving would help her. Um, Even before she knew she was going to end up going to Chicago, she saved money. So when she got to Chicago, she would work. She worked in some of the same places that she'd worked in when she was in New Orleans. She worked as a washerwoman. She worked in a hotel cleaning. She did some of the same things, but she made a little bit more money in Chicago.
Yes.
Um, and she saved her money. She started saving her money very early on. So when she became somebody, that became natural to her to save money, but also to control her own money. She believed in controlling her own money. And, for performers, for people who had managers and people that actually kind of controlled their schedules, um, that wasn't normal. They usually let someone else handle everything, even
Absolutely.
their own money, but she would not do that. And people knew her. They knew that if they tried to short her or not pay her when they were supposed to, that was not a good thing
That was
because
the
the
end.
other side of her came out. The other side of her came out. She got her money always.
Yes.
Um, so she was good with her money. She saved her money. She always got paid, always. She had other businesses. She just knew that she couldn't depend on one thing, so she had other businesses. She was a florist, and this came from her knowing um, that people needed flowers for funerals because
Oh.
she got the job of being a funeral singer.
Oh,
When
did she?
people, yeah, one of her best friends owned a funeral home. So and all the big people in Chicago, when they would die, he would handle their funerals. And he would get her to sing at all these funerals. And she knew that people bought flowers for funerals. So
That's
she
it.
opened a florist shop. So not only was she singing at the funeral, she was selling the flowers and the plants to the church or to the people who were
Smart
buying them.
lady.
Yes. And besides that, she also was a beautician. She had her own beauty shop. She hired about 9 or 10 women to work in
Okay.
her beauty shop. And as she got bigger, when she got to the place where she didn't have time to do hair, she turned it over to one of her workers that she knew was really, really good. And she started running the beauty shop. But she did that for a number of years. And it wasn't until she got really big that she relinquished the beauty shop because she was good at it. She enjoyed it. People loved it. She would have people waiting outside, waiting for
Wow.
her because she was so good at what
That's
she
great.
did.
Yeah.
So she was a great businesswoman. She died really wealthy. She was one of the wealthiest women in America, and certainly Black women in America.
Wow, that's impressive. Like you said,
Mhm.
I didn't know any of that, so
Mhm.
I'm grateful that you took the time to research, to look into everything, and tell us about some of the experience you had, like during writing all this. What are some of the experiences you personally felt yourself?
Well, I really enjoyed writing the book because I got to know Mahalia Jackson as I wrote the book. Like I said, I didn't know very much about her. I knew she was a great woman. I knew she, she was a star and all that, but I
Yeah.
didn't know her. And what writing the book allowed me to do was to research her and get to know her, from her own words, from her own interviews that she did, from her songs, from other people's writing about her. So I,
Yes.
I gained so much information and appreciation for her, and really loved her as a person. And one of the things that I tend to do when I write about people is I always listen. I meditate and I
Mm.
listen to hear them, to hear their voices, to feel their presence, to know, to feel good about the direction that I'm going in writing their story, because I want the story to be something that they want to share with the
Yes.
world. So that's kind of something, a process that I always go through if I'm going to deliver someone's story to the world. And I felt really blessed as I wrote her story to know that, to believe that I was doing what she wanted me to do, that she was pleased with what I did as far as sharing her story with the world. I had a really out of world experience going to New Orleans and visiting the place where she grew up, visiting the church where
Mm.
she spent all those years singing,
Yes.
um, visiting her burial site, and just doing a lot of research down there where people, they grew up knowing who she was as a person who was part of their community.
Yes, that's awesome. Now, and thank you for explaining that. The next question we have is, how did you decide the name, the title of the book? How did we come up with the title?
I came up with the title because of who Mahalia Jackson is and how important Sundays were to her, not only as a child. When she was a child, Sundays were everything. She lived a hard life. I mean, she was doing grown-up work when she was 8 years old. That was her life. So to really feel like a child and feel loved and feel that people really cared was when she got up and sang in church on Sunday mornings. She would stay awake at night waiting for Sunday morning where she could put her little dress on and go to church. And people would say, "Okay, Haley, time for you to sing," and just tell her how well she did and hug her. And those were magical moments for her. So it didn't happen every day, but it happened on Sundays. And then later in life, Sundays were important because church was always for first and foremost in her life. Uh, because she'd never played at church. It was something that was so deep inside of her. So that's kind of how I came up with that. Sundays were everything to Mahalia Jackson.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that.
Mhm.
Now, the next question that we have is, did she have a favorite song?
I think her favorite song was what Martin Luther King actually asked her to sing, um, Precious Lord.
Yes.
She loved that song, and he loved that song. And I think that was probably her favorite song. Um, I don't remember reading about any other song that she cared that much about, as much about.
Right.
And
I
if you
believe,
ever see her sing it, you
yeah.
can Google and watch her sing it and just see how it um, impacts her, how it just goes all through her when she sings it.
Well, I believe it because it goes all through me when I hear her singing it, even today, 2022.
Yes.
Yeah, so awesome. Thank you for answering that question. Now, do you have your book with you where you want to like read a little bit to us, or
I can read a little bit to you.
just to give them a little taste of it, not too much, a
Okay.
snippet of it?
Okay.
Yes.
And okay, let me read just this. And this is about when she was first born. Mahalia was born into a house ruled and run by women, aunts mostly. Porter, who was her uncle, was in and out. He had his own family to see after and was often traveling on the boats. He worked the boats. When he did return home, he made it his business to visit his sisters to make sure they were faring well. Mahalia was named after Charity's sister. Mahala Duke arrived on Thursday, on October Day, like most in New Orleans, unusually warm, humid, and threatening rain. Mahalia slipped into the world rosy and pink, not the signature ebony color she would be known as in later life. The crowd of aunts and the midwife, Granny Lee, immediately noticed the baby's crooked legs and the mucus that covered her red, inflamed eyes. The aunts looked at each other, understanding the connotation of the infection, before turning the lamp off to protect the infant's eyes. The new addition to the Clark family was originally named Mahala, after her aunt Mahala Duke. Later, the name would be softened with an I added to the last syllable. Mahala's father, Johnny Jackson, lived around the corner from the Clark sisters' home on the corner of Walnut between Water and Magazine. Mahalia Haley Jackson was recorded in the New Orleans City Hall by Granny Lee, who had done this very same thing to countless Black babies. While she was still nursing her child, Charity was already figuring she had to return to work for the Ryder family in a hurry. No colored woman had the luxury of laying up with their baby, listening to their coos and smiles for very long. She knew she'd have to work to eat and keep a roof over hers and her children's heads.
We have the website on here, so you can actually order it a couple of different ways through the email address, which is Janis at wowpublishing.org, or either you can call the 501-772-2930 number. And also, you can order it this evening. So whether you see the video now or you see the video later, you can put some comments in here, and Janis, the phenomenal Janis, and I will make sure we're looking at here periodically. So you can order one tonight. She will sign it. She will autograph it for you, which is outstanding. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. So the next question that we have is, how did she describe herself?
Wow, that's interesting. Because I think I wrote that she never realized that she was a beautiful woman because she, growing up, had never been told she was beautiful. But she was tall and she was regal and she had these beautiful high cheekbones, beautiful eyes. But she didn't see that when she looked in the mirror. She just saw a big Black woman. Um, that's what she saw. Um, but she was so much more than that. She thought she could sing well. She knew that. She knew that God had endowed her with a voice. So she always recognized that. And I think she knew that she also could kind of convince people of things because she was a very charming woman as well, with that big smile, and people gravitated to her very easily. She had lots of cousins and kinfolk who kind of were around her a lot. She had a large circle of people that were with her most times. And I think I wrote that I believed that she was a very lonely person um, because she needed people around her. And
Yeah.
I do believe that began with the loss of her mother and never actually dealing with that loss.
Yes. Yeah, that definitely can affect you, like you said, the
Mhm,
loss of her mother and at such a young age, like you said
mhm,
earlier, at 6 years old. And I know even how was it for her growing up with other kids or growing up with her siblings? What did she
mhm.
experience with them growing up?
Right. She just had one sibling and that she grew up with, and that
Yes,
was her brother Peter. And Peter, of course, he was a young boy, so he treated it differently. Um, she it took her a long time to get over her mother's death,
yes,
um, but Aunt Duke finally made sure she did. Um, Her other aunts, they cuddled her and kind of made sure she was okay when she was young. But I don't think in that time, uh, you know, you had to just get up and do what you had to do. You didn't have time to try to get over the trauma of losing your mother the way some people do now. Some young
absolutely.
people can now. At that point, she wasn't able to do that.
No. Yeah, not, and I believe her brother had a nickname for her too, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah, he called her scissor legs, I think.
Right.
Uh, yeah, because of the way she walked.
Okay.
Because of her legs, because they were crooked.
Yes. Okay. And then what is Mahalia Jackson's greatest legacy? What is it?
I think her greatest legacy is her voice. I think that's what everybody will remember her as, a great singer. Um, she brought the world together with her
Yes.
voice.
Hmm.
Um, she soothed the world with her voice. She made people hope with her voice. One of the things she always said was the difference between the blues and gospel was that gospel was about hope, about things getting better, and the blues was always about things not getting better. Um, things, the negatives in life.
Yes.
And she wanted to sing about hope, and that's why she chose gospel over the blues. So I think her voice, in so many different ways, is her legacy, and I think that's what Martin Luther King saw. He saw that she could do great things because of that gift that God gave her.
That's it. That's awesome. Thank you. And is there anything else at this time that you would like to share with us?
Well, I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to traveling and talking about Mahalia Jackson. Um, I feel it is an honor for me to do so, um,
Yes.
to have written about her, first of all, and now to be able to share her story with the world.
Right. Well, I definitely want to thank you because I know you did it on Mahalia Jackson, but the thing about it is you are history in front of us right now. Because to be able to take on something as big as this is
Mhm.
as big, as major, and I feel like God knew that you would not only carry it, but you would push it out for people like me and many others behind us that will appreciate the work, the time, the efforts you put into it. Because anybody that carries a baby, they know they have to push. And I'm thankful that you didn't abort it and you pushed it fully out and it has been manifested. And
Thank you so
I'm
much.
just overjoyed with what you're doing, like I said before, because I know that this you're gonna, like I told you earlier, you're gonna have to put your traveling shoes and your clothes, have them together because you'll be going all over the place with this. This is something huge. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than me. It just needed to be out there. So we definitely thank you for taking the time to do it. Once I mentioned earlier, if you want to, if you can go ahead and order the book this evening. You don't have to wait. You can order it this evening by putting a comment in here, and we'll make sure we get it back to this phenomenal author that we have in front of us, Janis F. Kearney. And pretty soon it's going to be available in bookstores. We have the email addresses that you can actually send an email to, or either you can call. Janis F. Kearney is available for all kind of events. You needed to come out there and speak. You needed to come out there for conferences. She's available for you. So this is the contact information. And once again, like I said, this is also you can go on the website, which is the HTTPS store, which is bookbaby.com, and you can order on there. Either way you order it, Janice will make sure she autographs it for you as well. So we just want to say thank you for being here with us this
Thank
evening. Thank
you.
you so much for being here and
Thank
making
you.
our day and enlightening us in every possible way this evening. And I tell you, I have been enlightened. So thank you. So
Thank you.
yes,
Continue to do the good work
I'm
because
sorry.
you're doing God. I say you continue to do the good work because you're doing
Thank
God's work as well.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we hope to have you back here again and again and again. So definitely. So at this time, we're going to get ready to go ahead and close out our show. We'll be back again. Please share this episode with others. You think of anything after the show, put notes, comments in here. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and close out. Thank you for joining us, whether it was on Facebook this evening or whether it was on YouTube. We thank you for your time tonight. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and close out.